Can you all hear me? Is it working? Okay. Oh, I just spoke, Caleb. Can you hear me? Okay. All right, so we're going to get this started. Nate, do you mind opening us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time for us to be able to gather here together and worship you and open your word and with each other and learn. And just pray that you'd use this time to impact our hearts for you, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thanks, Nate. How's everybody doing today? Good. So we are still in the book of Revelation. We're on lesson 37, and we're only at starting chapter 13. So I had wanted to change the way I was going to teach and maybe get through more chapters quicker and kind of do an outline or just a general outline of what the chapter's about. I'm finding I'm not doing a good job at that because today we're only going to get through 2 verses. So I don't know if I'll have enough material. Maybe we'll get a little bit early. I don't know, but I didn't want to start the 3rd. I want to get halfway through it and find out we're out of time. So we're going to start with chapter 13, and here we're going to see the beast from the earth. So as we look at Revelation 13, we're going to see the Antichrist revealed. Everybody's heard of the Antichrist, right? We briefly talked about him before in Revelation 6. Where do we see him in Revelation 6? Does anybody remember? Remember Revelation? The white horse. He's the rider on the white horse, right? So we talked a little bit about him at that point. We'll talk more about him today. But that was probably our first introduction to him in the book of Revelation. And of course, he's a prominent figure in the book of Revelation. There's about 100 passages in the Bible concerning this coming world leader. This man has many names, as you know. We talked about it briefly in 6. Most of those are probably not recognizable to us because when we think of the coming world leader, we just automatically think Antichrist, right? So some of his names... Well, first off, somebody read 1 John 2:18 for me.
Children, it is the last hour, and just as you heard that the Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have appeared. We know from this that it is the last hour. Okay, so some of the names of these other names of the Antichrist is seed of the serpent. That's Genesis 3:15. The man of sin, the son of perdition. That's 2 Thessalonians 2:8. The beast, Revelation 11:7. And we're going to see that word again today. The false prophet, Revelation 13. That will be later. We won't see that today. The bloody and deceitful man, that comes from Psalms 5:6. The wicked one, also from Psalms 5. The head over many countries, Psalms 1:10. The Assyrian, Isaiah 10. The prince that shall come, that's in Daniel. The willful king, also in Daniel. The idol shepherd, Zechariah 11:16 and 17. The angel of the bottomless pit, Revelation 9. And if you remember from Revelation 6, my favorite is the little horn. Somebody read Daniel 7:8 for me.
I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things.
I heard somebody call him this one time, and it just stuck. I love it. Little Big Mouth, right? He's a little big mouth. So that's one of my favorite names for him. So according to John 1, 2, and 8, there have been many antichrists, right? But the one we're going to talk about today is unique. All right, he's unique. What do we know so far from the Bible about the Antichrist? We know that he's an intellectual genius.
We know that's going to happen. He's going to be very smart. We get that from Daniel 7, 8, and Ezra 28. He's a persuasive orator. We've known some persuasive orators. One that comes to mind would be Hitler, right? I don't want to put Obama in the same class as him, but he was persuasive, right? Reagan. So he's going to be very persuasive. He's going to be a shrewd politician from Daniel 11:21 and Daniel 8. If you'll notice, we get a lot of our descriptions from the Antichrist, about the Antichrist, from Daniel. He's going to be a forceful military leader. We get that from Daniel 8:24, and also from Revelation 6, which we talked about as a rider on the white horse, right? He's going to be a shrewd financial genius. He's going to be a powerful organizer, and he's going to be a unifying guru. And we actually know what he's going to look like. Do you guys know that? We know what he's going to look like. It says, Isaiah 11:17, it says, "Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened." So we're going to know something about him, at least what he looks like. Now, we won't see it. There's speculation on how he gets that way. Maybe that's after he's mortally wounded and comes back to life. That's the mark that's left behind. We don't know. We know what he's going to look like. So is anybody here, I'm telling you I love eschatology, so I'm really interested in this kind of stuff. Is anybody here at all interested in who the Antichrist is and what he's going to be like? Well, you guys aren't alone. He's been prophesied throughout history, and Christians have been aware of him and have been looking for him and to identify him. We see that all the way back to the first century with the early church. It goes back to 40 AD when a Roman emperor named Caligula threatened to place an image of himself in the Temple of Jerusalem. So it goes all the way back to 40, and it spread among the early Christians that this man may be the one, the Antichrist. A few years later, Caesar Nero arrived on the scene as the emperor of Rome, and in 57 he launched a persecution of Christians. And his attacks on the church have never been as great as his were up to today. And because of that, many believers referred to him as the beast, because they thought he was the Antichrist. Now we know when the Antichrist comes, his persecution is going to be worse than Caesar Nero's, right? Well, what's interesting is people are still interested today. If you do a Google search, if you search Google for the term Antichrist, it results in over 11 million hits. You get 11 million hits. So everybody seems to be interested in this thing, this guy. If you search for the term, who is the Antichrist, it yields, at least for me, it yielded 1.2 million results. But I heard somebody else talking, and they said they got 112 million results. So maybe I just missed a decimal point. But it's a lot of results for who is, right? So a lot of people are interested in it. Either way, there's a lot of opinions about who the Antichrist is. We've got 112 million results. Got a lot of opinions out there, right? So if you peruse some of those websites, some of them seem legit, right? Some of them seem to be theologically sound. And others that you go to, you just probably want to stay away from those ones. There's some that are like way out there. So anyhow, that's just what I have found. Have you guys personally ever seen the internet and seen speculation on who the Antichrist could be? No? Because I love this stuff, I have. So I mentioned Obama. You not believe how many items out there, websites out there claim that Obama is going to be the Antichrist. And he talks the talk. He's very persuasive. He was very eloquent in his speech, and he had a globalist agenda, right? You figure the Antichrist can have a globalist agenda. I even saw that according to Gematria, that's where you count it's a Jewish Hebrew thing, all the letters have a number value, and you do all of that, and they say his number comes to 666.
for Obama. You know, I don't know.
If you do that in certain ways, you can get almost anybody's.
That's right. You probably could. What's when you pull up the numbers? That's not statistics, but what's the line I heard? If you, or maybe it's just a fact. If you torture the facts enough, they'll confess to anything, right? So you're right. You can probably get any name to come up with that. So a lot of American presidents have been accused of being the future Antichrist. So Obama wasn't the first. In 1990, Gregory Stewart invaded the house of former President Reagan. When captured, he told the Secret Service agents, "Ronald Reagan is the Antichrist. He must be killed and I must kill him." Do you remember that? My mother and that lady up the street were friends, but the thing they didn't agree on was politics. And I remember being at her house and claiming if that Reagan gets in, he's going to start World War III. It'll be the end of the world. Right? So that's what people have those opinions. How about Kennedy? You guys ever heard of Kennedy? I had heard of Kennedy before. He's Catholic, and so people think, well, Catholic, he's Catholic. He could be the Antichrist. It goes back to Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. Many thought he was the Antichrist. He had extraordinary influence around the world. And he was pivotal in forming the United Nations. So everybody thought, oh, look, he's forming a one-world government. So that's one. And Thomas Jefferson was even called the Antichrist. So it goes way back. And if you go online and look, you're always going to find that somebody that says that the U.S. president is someday going to be the Antichrist. Now, I don't know about that, but I wonder how they'll deal with that answer if a woman ever gets elected, right? So just my thoughts. So it's not just U.S. presidents. A number of popes have been accused of being the Antichrist, or will be the Antichrist. Napoleon. How about Prince Charles? Have you heard of Prince Charles as possibly an Antichrist? He has done a lot of Antichrist-esque things, I guess you could say. So, but that's all out there. Hitler, like I said, was accused at the time of that he will be the Antichrist. And here's something he said. At one of his rallies, he said, "What Christ began, I will complete." I can see how the people in those days might have thought that. Elon Musk, have you heard that one? I've heard Elon Musk. How about Putin? You guys ever heard of Putin? Some people think Putin may be the Antichrist. I'd never thought of that one, but here's what an article in the New York Times said. This is a quote from Putin. He said, "One single center of power, one single center of force, one single center of design, of decision making. This is the world of one master and one sovereign." So that was what Putin said. Seems kind of Antichrist-esque, don't you think? So I even saw one website claiming that the internet would be the Antichrist. And they get their logic that from, how every website has a www? Well, in the Hebrew, the W corresponds to the Hebrew Vav. And this is the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So you've got 666. Isn't that crazy? So it's crazy, the speculation out there about who this Antichrist is. And there's more that I could mention. Many have come. Many Antichrist-like people have come, and many more will come, I'm sure. Many are being eyed for that role today. The point I'm making here is we read 1 John 2:18, "Little children, is the last hour. And as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come, by which we know that it is the last hour." So speculate all you want, but I know one thing is that we will not see him. I've mentioned before, we will be raptured before he comes. So we can speculate all we want. We don't know who he'll be. So moving on into chapter 13, it's important to remember that much of the book of Revelation is given in symbolic language. Though it speaks in symbolic language, it speaks about actual, literal events which are going to happen. It's not an allegory.
It's written in the kind of language that evokes emotion, but it speaks about literal events that will take place in the future. So being well-versed in the Old Testament, the book of Revelation will be easier for you to understand. I mentioned that before. Out of the 404 verses in the book of Revelation, 360 of them make reference to or quote or allude to the Old Testament. That's 90% of the book of Revelation. So if you were a first century Jewish Christian, this book would be more understandable to you. Does that make sense? You have to get into the mind of who the reader is. And at that point, it was the not that it doesn't have any value for us, but the reader was the first century Jew. You could even say Second Temple Jew. This is why I've always said a good prerequisite to study in the book of Revelation would be the book of Ruth and the book of Daniel. In the book of Ruth, you learn about what the church's place is in God's plan, right? In the book of Daniel, much of the symbolism found in this book is found in the book of Daniel. We're going to see that today. So open up your Bible. Well, I'm sure they're already open. Look at Revelation 13. Will someone read verses 1 through 10? We'll just read 1 through 10.
The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear, and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power, and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshipped the beast and asked, "Who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it?" The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise its authority. For 42 months it opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them, and it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, and whose names have been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. Whoever has ears, let him hear. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people.
Okay, so we read the whole passage. We won't get through that whole passage today, but I wanted you to have an understanding of who this introduction was. It's the introduction of the Antichrist. This deals with the Antichrist. Now, as I told you in the book of Revelation, there's a lot of parenthetical gaps, stops, where information is provided, and we're in the middle of one of those right now. I think maybe it's the 5th one. But here we're getting information on who this Antichrist is that we've heard so much about. So in Revelation 12, we saw that heaven was John's vision was basically heaven. Heaven was in view. So in Revelation 13, the earth is in view in John's vision. And what's interesting here is if we remember what just happened in Revelation 12. Does anybody remember what just happened in Revelation 12? Satan was thrown out of heaven, right? There was a big war, and Satan was cast out of heaven. No longer able to go back. So if we look at verse 1 again, it says, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name." Does anybody else have a different wording in there of that verse? Is anybody using a different translation? Because I want to clear something up on this. What was your verse 1? How did that open up?
I have the NIV. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea.
Okay. So yours says dragon. If you look at the New King James Version, it says I. So that would lead you to believe that who is I in this case? John. But here in NIV and in the NASB and some of the others, it says he or dragon. So it turns out that some translators think that the word is he, and that some believe the word should be I. It's some ambiguity in the translation of the scripture, and I didn't have a lot of time to research the Greek and find out where that comes from, but apparently that comes from the fact that since many more documents are available today than were available when the New King James was written, a lot of more Koine Greek documents have become available and a better understanding of the language. Many scholars think the word should be he. Which, why am I making a big deal about I and he? If we consider what just happened in the in chapter 12, Satan has cast down to earth. Now he stands on the sand. Does that make sense? And I tend to agree with the NASB on that. Anybody else have any opinions on that?
I kind of look at this as, you got to remember who's writing the book of Revelation.
Okay.
It was John who was given these visions.
Okay.
And I think it's actually John who's actually there.
Standing on the...
Standing on the sea.
Okay.
And he says, this is what I'm seeing. Because it says, and I saw the beast. The dragon wouldn't have saw a beast. The dragon would have gave power to the beast.
Okay. And what else does it say in the NIV after I? Sorry, in the NIV after it says I saw, yours says he, a dragon.
Yeah, and I have a note in here, and it says, some manuscripts say, and I instead of a dragon. So
Okay.
and I stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw the beast coming out of the sea. That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not dogmatic about it in either way. Just remember what happened in Revelation 12. Satan was cast down. Now, from the beach or from the sand, we see what's happening. What John sees here is a vision of the beast rising out of the sea who has received power from his father, the dragon. Right? And what I think is interesting is after being thrown from heaven, Satan wastes no time empowering an imposter, this beast, right? And you've all heard that Satan always mimics what God does. I almost see this as Satan starting to create his own Trinity, right? Because when we get further into chapter 13 and on, we're going to see a prophet come along. And so you almost have a Satan, his son, the beast, and then his prophet, which would be the Holy Spirit, kind of a Trinity, an unholy Trinity there. So I just think it's interesting how Satan, when you hear that Satan always tries to copy everything God does, we see that here in the book of Revelation as well. So the beast we see here in Revelation is very different to Daniel's fourth beast. In Daniel 7, 7 and 8, and 1927, here's what we see. We'll just read Daniel 7, 7 through 8. It says, After this I saw the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first kings were plucked out by the roots. And there, in this horn, were the eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. So there's that little big mouth that I like, but like the word I like using. So in Revelation, the term beast refers to 2 related entities. Sometimes the beast refers to the end-time empire, and that's the 7 heads and 10 horns, indicate that the beast will be a coalition of nations that rise to power to subdue the earth under Satan's control. And later references to the beast speak of an individual. So We have an individual and we have his beast system, which would be the nations. So this man is a political leader as well as the head of a beastly empire. So what's worth noting here in verse 1, according to some scholars, we get a clue regarding the ethnicity of this Antichrist. So when you read chapter 1, you saw where it says, I saw a beast rising out of the sea. Many scholars believe that's a clue regarding his ethnicity. Many commentators speculate that the beast being from the sea means that he's a Gentile. The sea is usually identified with a group of people, Revelation 17:5 and Isaiah 57:20 and 21. So many scholars believe the Antichrist will be a Gentile political leader. This suggests that the Antichrist will be Gentile, not Jewish. How many of you have heard that they thought the Antichrist would be Jewish? I've heard that, and I've also heard that he's probably going to be Muslim. So we don't know, but many scholars today believe that he's going to be a Gentile. He comes up from the sea of humanity. The beast here is mentioned 36 times in the book of Revelation. Now, I don't know what you do with that. I just think it's interesting. But moving forward, here in verse 1, we see that it has 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns. Now, that seems to relate or echo what we saw in Daniel 7. According to some commentators, the consensus about the horns is that the 10 horns are the future 10 Confederate kingdoms. I found this interesting when I was looking, and I probably should have included it when I was talking about the United Nations and Roosevelt, but this one piqued my interest when I was looking at who the Antichrist could be. Some websites think that the UN, the leader of the UN, will be the Antichrist, because right now the UN is on its 10th leader. It's called the Secretary General. So we're waiting for it's on the 9th right now, we're waiting for the 10th to come on the scene. And if you look at the map, and I didn't get to do slides today, I intended to, it didn't work out, but if you look at the map at how the UN has separated the world into regions, there's 10 regions. So there would be the next Secretary General would be the 10th leader of the UN, and the UN has separated the world into 10 separate regions. I don't know if that's true or not. I just thought that was interesting also. But anyhow, we're waiting for the number 10 for the kingdoms. Now, what are those going to be? I don't know. I remember when I had a book when I was in high school. I think I was a freshman. And it was Why God Will Come Back in 1988. So I've been interested in this a long time. I remember reading Hal Lindsey's Late Great Planet Earth when I was in 8th grade. So this has always been an interest of mine. But one of them was, we've got this European Economic Union. And at the time it had like 7 nations. And they were just convinced, oh man, when this gets to 10 nations, that's it right there. Anybody remember hearing that kind of stuff? And then of course, then it went up to 12, 13, 20. Well, then they had to, was that? A lot more. And so then they had to refigure out their charts, and then it became 10 reasons why God is coming back in 1998, right? So, but anyhow, so they've always speculated on that. But anyhow, the 10 horns mean a 10 kingdom confederacy that will come in the future, that the Antichrist will rule. The 7 heads. According to scholars, that represents the past Gentile empires that have been hostile to Israel. So when you go through the Bible, what you'll discover is that there have been 7 empires that have been hostile to the nation of Israel. Isn't that interesting? These nations have trampled Israel for ages, and these 7 heads represent these kingdoms. The first one was Egypt. Egypt, of course, is where the nation of Israel was taken into captivity in the time of Moses. The next one is Assyria. You remember what Assyria did? Anybody?
So they captured the lower 10 nations?
The what?
The northern 10?
The northern kingdom of Israel. right? After Israel split up into a southern and northern kingdom. So Assyria was the empire that God used to scatter the northern tribes in 722 BC. What did Babylon do? Babylon is the next.
They captured the southern kingdom of Judah.
They did, right? They captured the southern kingdom and took them into captivity for 70 years. The next would be Persia. It was under Persia that we read about a very wicked man named Haman, who had developed a plot to exterminate the Jews. We read about that in the book of Esther. Do you guys remember what happened there? Anybody? Esther went to the king, right? And the king made a decree that the Jews could defend themselves, basically. And Haman was eventually hung on the gallows. And the Jews still celebrate that today as their holiday of Purim. So then we've got Greece. Greece was the empire under Alexander the Great. Because of the Greek Empire, without going into details about the history of it all, we get Antioch Epiphanes, one of the types of Antichrist who desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. And it was because of Alexander's death, when he said, when they was asked by the generals, who do we give the kingdom to? And he says, give it to the strong. It was split between the generals, his generals. And you had the Seleucid and you had the Ptolemaic empires. And they fought, and Jerusalem was stuck in the middle. So they trampled Jerusalem for many, many years. After that was Rome, right? Now, Rome is going to be separated into two gaps. We know that what Rome did to the Jewish people, ejecting them from their homeland in AD 70 and destroyed the temple, right? We know that happened. And then we learn from the Bible study that Rome has to be brought back to life. So we're going to have we have Rome in the past, and we're going to have Rome in the future. And its second phrase of Rome, that a new world order will arise coming from the cultural inheritance of ancient Rome. Eventually it will cover the whole earth, and we'll call that Rome Phase 2. How do we know this revival of the Roman Empire will happen? Does anybody know? Does anybody know where it says that in the Bible? No, but that would be, if you're asking anything about prophecy and the book of Revelation, you'd think Daniel would be a great answer. In this case, it's not. Revelation.
I would like Daniel because the feet of iron and clay.
The miry clay, right? Mixed up. Now, in Revelation 17, 9 and 10, we read, "Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the women sit. And they are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other is not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while." So at the time of this writing, 5 have gone, 1 is, and 1 is to come. Now, why do they think Rome when they read this? Because Rome is known as a city of 7 hills. I don't know if it's the only city that qualifies, but that's why they think it's Rome Phase 2. Now, does that mean that the seat of the power of the Antichrist will be in Rome? Not necessarily. You figured, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would think that when you look at a lot of the studies, you'll find that Rome is going to, a lot of people think that Rome is going to be where the false prophets are going to come from.
Pope. And I agree with you. I think that a lot of people say the Pope is the Antichrist. I don't believe so. I believe it's probably the false prophet. I agree with you that I'm not dogmatic about it, but I agree with you on that. That's what I think. But you have to remember, what do we know about Rome? It was so big and so difficult to govern that it split into 2 sides, an eastern leg and a western leg. And we see that from the statue. And we think of Rome falling when it did in, 400 or 300 AD, and then you have a continuation of kind of the Roman Empire under the Catholic Church, the Holy Roman Empire. But basically, that we know that Rome fell early on, but the eastern leg of the empire lasted for, until 1200 AD, long time. So just because it's Rome phase 2 doesn't mean that the seat of power of the Antichrist will be in Rome, Italy. Could be anywhere where the eastern leg was too. Who knows? Somewhere in the Middle East. That's kind of what I think, but I'm not dogmatic about that either. So the 7 heads represent the embodiment of all the anti-Semitic Gentile empires that have come before and are now represented in one composite anti-Semitic beast. And that's the beast we're reading about here. And I wrote here, by the way, concerning the ethnicity of the Antichrist, given that these were all Gentile nations, doesn't it make sense that the Antichrist would be Gentile? And it does. It makes sense that he would be Gentile. So 5 have fallen: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greece. 1 that is, which was Rome, as John wrote the book of Revelation. Book of Revelation was written in 95 AD. Rome was still in power. And the other, which has not yet come, which will be the revived Roman Empire. We do know that the Antichrist's kingdom, this last phase 2, will be short-lived. It'll be a short-lived kingdom. And from what we've been looking at, the book of Revelation, it will be a very brutal and destructive kingdom, right? We know that's going to happen. So in verse 2, as we move forward, we see a composite creature. It says, "Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority." So what that's saying is that Satan himself gives the Antichrist his power and his authority. So the composite, this creature that John sees, the leopard, the bear, and the lion links the Antichrist to Babylon, Persia, and Greece. And now they're merged into one terrifying end-time ruler. These descriptions of a leopard, bear, and a lion echo Daniel chapter 7, but are in reverse order. The lion communicates arrogance and authority, and it's associated with Babylon. The bear controls extensively, controls everything, and that's associated with the Medo-Persian Empire. And the leopard conquers swiftly, which is associated with the Greek Empire. The Greek Empire spread very fast. In fact, I don't know if it's true, if he actually truly said this, but I guess Alexander the Great lamented and wailed when he found there were no more worlds left to conquer. He'd done it all by the time he was in his early 30s, right? So Greek conquers swiftly. So once again in verse 2, we see the dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. So you guys get some time back today. I'm finishing early again today. I didn't want to start Revelation 3 and get halfway, or verse 3 and get halfway through. So are there any questions anybody might have about what we've talked about? Sure.
It's kind of going ahead, but you said that the beast came out of the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that kind of represented the Trinity. But then when you get down to verse 11, there's a second beast coming out of the earth. What do you do with that?
Well, we'll talk about that when we get there.
Well, it kind of contradicts what you said.
It does, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But I do think it's neat, or not neat, but it's interesting that Satan copies everything. And we're going to have a copy here of a Trinity with the Antichrist. Anybody else have anything they want to add? Nobody? That's 2 weeks in a row I finished early, which is okay because usually people are pointing at their watches, so I'm okay with that. All right, well, if nobody has anything else, I'll close this up in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for the day you've given us. We thank you for loving us and caring for us and providing us a church family that we can come in fellowship and have a great time with, and that we can open your word and study your word. God, I know that we don't know everything about your word, and especially when it comes to the book of Revelation. It's canonized for a reason. And God, we might not understand everything we will, but we pray for the saints that follow us after the rapture of the church, because they will be the ones to understand this, and they will be the ones that know what's going on, because I know that much of this was probably written for them as they seek you and seek to know you. So I just pray for our church family today as we leave, and I pray for future generations that have to go through this, that they would come to know you and that you would protect them as well. In your son's name I pray. Amen.
Jim Creasy mentioned Hitler and how he can speak to the people in German. When I was going to college, I was in Las Vegas, New Mexico, kind of north of the heart. There was a lot of Hispanic folk in that part of the world that feel disinfectants. So in the 70s, there was a guy named Ray Tiarino that kind of headed these folks out. So he was going to make a speech on our college campus one day. And of course, he spoke in Spanish. I thought, well, I'm just curious, I'm going to go see. It was absolutely amazing when he started speaking, especially to the older Hispanic people. They got so excited about what he had to say.
Wow.
It's amazing to me that he could affect those people that way. And I kind of relate that to what Hitler was able to do when he spoke to the German people.
Yeah, he'd get them into a frenzy, wouldn't he?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what this guy's going to do. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know this. I don't remember his name. I wish I did. Maybe somebody has followed it as well, but can remember. There's a guy out there. He's Muslim, and he has the entire Quran memorized. And his name starts with an M, Mahadro, something like that. But he claims to be the Mahdi. And I don't know if you guys know who the Mahdi is. Do you guys know who that is? So in Islamic end times, I don't know if you call it eschatology for them too, but they believe that the Mahdi is coming. And the wars that you see with Iran right now, attacking Israel and all that's going on there, they believe that their role is to destroy Israel, because once Israel is destroyed, the Mahdi can come, which is their future leader. And I can't help but to wonder if that would be synonymous with our Antichrist. And I guess the point I'm making is that the Muslims are looking for someone too. The Jews are looking for someone too.
I think people in general, when you figure people are just gone, and the banking system's a mess, and everything in the world is going to be total chaos.
Yep.
You know, talking about Satan sending deceiving the people. All of a sudden stuff comes on and brings a message of hope and coordinates things and allows the world to start, be moving in a different, that's going to be easily accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's going to be nobody really in charge, or trying to find somebody who steps up who's in charge.
Right?
I think that's the big thing. People are just gone.
That's true.
How much chaos is going to happen with that?
You're absolutely correct. It kind of reminds me of the period after the fall of the Roman Empire. I don't want to bash Catholicism, because I believe that it existed because God had its place for it, right? I don't agree with it. But I actually think it's heretical and has some pagan roots, but it served its purpose, because after Rome fell, there was a huge power vacuum. Europe was in chaos, and who stood up to take charge? It was a pope from the Catholic Church. And the Roman Church, the Holy Roman Church, held a vice iron grip on on Europe until the Reformation.
You figure 6 or 7 months, even people just gone, the banking system
Yeah.
out of control, the looting and the things that will take place, because, imagine having your police force gone, and people all of a sudden go to their martial law or do the things that they want.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody has no control, kill whoever you want to kill, and who's going to tell you you can or you can't?
Right? Absolutely. Because if you think,
There's no law.
you're right, if you think about it, for the police officers, they're out there trying to protect and serve. Some of them are, some of them might not be, but they're trying to make sure that the law is in place, there's a rule of law, but if everything breaks down,
You take like the city of, like take Los Angeles.
Right.
1 million people.
they're not going to be on the
You got
streets.
20,000 police officers and some of them are gone, and you got 8 million people out of control.
Right? And those police officers aren't going to be out patrolling. They're going to be back protecting their families. They're not going back out anymore. It all breaks down. So, yeah, you probably don't even have to be a great speaker. I'm sure he is, because we know he is, but you probably wouldn't have to be a great speaker if you had a plan.
Our money, just think of our money system. I mean,
Right?
if really all our money is, most of our money is just on a piece of paper.
It's the currency,
That's
it's all
wiped
perception,
out
yeah.
and gone, and that's all wiped out and gone, and the system's
Yep.
gone, and nobody can get money, and, you know, I mean, it's.
AI is gonna take over.
You know, I've heard that one too. I've heard that the Antichrist is going to be AI, which makes no sense to me because you don't throw a computer in the lake of fire, right? It has to be somebody. You're not throwing a computer in a lake of fire. But I've heard that one. That's crazy too. But-
Russia too, Walt used to say that, from the north, he used to say that Russia was gonna come down and control, you know, and that these beasts were the big tanks and,
Yeah, you know, I guess I used to think that too, that, you know, you'd see a description, this locust, and it sounds like a helicopter because it has hair of a woman, a breastplate of iron, its power to sting is in its tail and all that. And you think, well, it's like a helicopter. So I've changed a lot on those views. I think they're more demonic. But as far as Russia, we know the Magog invasion is going to happen, which I believe is post-rapture. Maybe not everybody believes that. I believe it's post-rapture because God is dealing exclusively with Israel at this point. And when he defends Israel from Russia, he does it because of his holy name. So he's exclusively dealing with Israel at this point. But that is going to happen. It's just the timing of when it is. But you figure the Antichrist, Rome conquered a lot of nations. And we know the Antichrist comes from those people that destroyed the temple. And it could be any nationality. They had legions of every ethnicity and nationality. So we don't know. I figure it's Middle Eastern.
Still, I mean, Russia's still trying to conquer the world. Look at this, all this Ukraine stuff. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, the world is definitely kind of crazy. Some people say it's in place, the pieces are in place.
More and more territory and land. They want to be the rulers of the world.
Yeah. Interesting times we live in.